Was CBS anchor Walter Cronkite announcing that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated in Dallas. It's been exactly 50 years since that tragic day. Let's get some perspective now from our Washington correspondent, Lorna Shaddrick. Lorna, afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us. So what kind of activities have been planned to mark this anniversary?
Well, many of the activities here in Washington have already taken place. Wednesday was set aside for President Obama to mark this half century since the assassination of his Democratic predecessor, John F. Kennedy. And he started Wednesday by a ceremony awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom, an award that was reinstituted by JFK to 16 Americans, including TV star Oprah Winfrey and former President Bill Clinton. And it was Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary who accompanied Barack Obama later on that day to Arlington Cemetery, where they laid a wreath on President Kennedy's grave. And in the evening there was a sparkling dinner at the Smithsonian Museum of American History, in which JFK's legacy of service was remembered by several living recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So that was on Wednesday. Today, Friday, President Obama is meeting privately with members of the Peace Corps, a humanitarian organization set up by John F. Kennedy. That's a private meeting because most of the focus today will be in Dallas, the city where, of course, that dreadful event took place 50 years ago. That will be marked by a ceremony on Dealey Plaza, very nearby where President Kennedy was shot. That will involve prayers from various religious leaders, music from the Dallas Symphony Orchestra and the Glee Club of the U.S. Naval Academy, because JFK was, of course, a naval officer himself. There will also be tolling of bells. The city church bells will all ring out. There'll be a fly past and, of course, the all-important moment of silence. And then on Saturday, tomorrow, the residents of Dallas will mark a day of service in memory of JFK.
How is his impact on U.S. politics viewed?
Well, it's really, I think JFK is really seen as the great what if, given that his time in office was so tragically cut short. There are so many questions about how he might have turned out if he'd been able to be in office longer. But I think really one of the greater impacts was that he was the first real TV president. He was the first president born in the 20th century, and really the first president to understand the significance of television and to really harness the medium for his advantage, and that was most famously played out, of course, in the presidential debate of 1960 against the then Vice President Richard Nixon, because those who listened on the radio felt that Nixon had won with his age and gravitas, but those who watched on TV and saw Kennedy's youth and vigour felt that he had carried the day instead. And he really was the first person to use the power not only of TV but Hollywood celebrities getting their backing as well to make politics much more of a stylish kind of a medium than it had been before. In terms of his foreign policy, he certainly became more statesmanlike. The Cuban Missile Crisis seen as the high point of that. And many historians say that's partly because as he grew into the role, he stopped taking the advice of older generals and older advisors and grew self-confident about taking his own decisions. But as I say, it's very hard to know how he might have turned out if he'd stayed in office. He did face another election in 1964, and he was very concerned that he might not even have won that because, of course, the election when he was brought in 1960 was very close. So he is the great what if.
He certainly ruled at a very turbulent time in terms of race relations in the U.S. What was his impact on civil rights?
Well, that again is a matter for great debate, because he has gone down in history as a president that did a lot for the cause of civil rights, and that's not completely wrong. John Lewis, a famous congressman here in the US who was involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s, has said that JFK did encourage their cause, although it has been said that he was sceptical about the March on Washington earlier in the summer of 1963. John Lewis said that is only because he was concerned there would be violence and that would set back the cause of civil rights. He said after the march had happened, Kennedy congratulated those involved like a father. So some saying that he really was somebody who pushed forward the cause of civil rights, and certainly he made a big speech in 1963 in which he set out why exactly civil rights were so important. That was seen as a turning point. Other historians said that up until then, he really didn't see civil rights as a vote winner for him. And because his majority was so narrow, because he had been elected by such a narrow margin, he didn't feel that it was a cause that he could really take up completely, something that did frustrate civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King, who were pushing him and urging him to do more earlier on in his presidency. So a bit of a mixed legacy, but certainly the Civil Rights Act that was passed after his death was passed mainly on the strength of it being something that he would have wanted. So in that respect, he certainly did have a great achievement there.
Our US correspondent Lorna Shaddrick talking to us about the 50th anniversary of JFK's death.
News that moves. eNCA.com.